Hello, hello. Before we get into this episode, I just want to say the audio quality probably isn't as good as we would hope for. The conversation, however, is really interesting, and Kat's story is really close to my heart. You're going to find out exactly why in just a moment, and I apologise in advance for the quality of the audio not being so great. We tried all sorts of things, we couldn't get it any better than what we have. I hope you can look past this, and I hope you'll find massive value in today's conversation. Welcome to Let's Talk Near Death, the podcast show that talks about life, death, and experiences somewhere in between. I'm Kirsty Salisbury, the host of the show, and I hope you'll join me as I chat to everyday people with not so everyday experiences. You may also wish to join the conversation over in the Let's Talk Near Death online community, which is found at www.letstalkneardeath.com. Membership is free, or you're welcome to upgrade to join the live VIP events, to gain early access to episodes, or to receive extra VIP bonus material. Your support helps me to continue to get episodes out and to help grow the conversation around these types of experiences. But before then, let's talk near death.
So I told my body, like you normally do, take myself over to the bed to lay down. And my body didn't do it. I was in this beautiful, gorgeous, kind of, I guess you'd describe it as a park, but not like any other park I had ever seen. I was so happy. I felt so loved. And I still felt so connected. I wasn't afraid. I was just loved. And I learned some things almost immediately I saw things and learned things. And there was no time. It was like instantaneous. You just don't feel time.
Hello, and welcome back to the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. Now, today's a very special episode. Today, I'm talking with Kat Sanders, and I didn't know this at the time, but as I went through and talked with Kat, it turns out that Kat had the very same illness that I had, which caused my near-death experience. So exciting to chat to her. So Kat had an AVM as well, an arteriovenous malformation, which meant that her brain hadn't formed correctly before she was born. She had the brain bleed, the brain hemorrhage, and it was in a similar place to mine, but not quite the same. So today I'm chatting with Kat Sanders. I'm excited to release this into the world, and I hope that you'll find massive value in our conversation today. So Kat, welcome to the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. It's wonderful to have you here, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join me. Tell us, how did all this happen? What is your story?
Well, it was several years ago, and a day like any other day. I was just at work having a regular day, and I felt great, no problems. I did a seminar that morning in front of a few hundred people, as my regular job would entail, and had lunch that day with a friend, and everything was great. And came home that afternoon, had several other meetings, and I was meeting my husband there, and had other meetings in the afternoon. And all of a sudden, I felt like someone stabbed me in the head with a knife. And it was so extreme that I literally felt my head with my hand. I really thought there was something in my head. It hurt so much. I have never in my life felt pain like that. And yet there was nothing there. And so it took a couple of seconds to realize something very, very serious was going on. And I'd just gotten out of the shower, and I was, just going into the bedroom to get dressed and freshen up and get ready for the rest of the day. And so I told my body, like you normally do, take myself over to the bed to lay down. And my body didn't do it. It wasn't doing what I told it to do. And it was horribly frightening. And at that point, I realized there was something really, really wrong. I called out to my husband as best I could. I'm not even sure what I said. It was something like, my head hurts bad and something's really wrong. And everything went to black. And at that point, it all started to happen. The sound started going to it kind of faded to nothingness. My eyesight just went to black. Everything was gone. I didn't feel anything anymore. And, from my side of the story, that's all I felt, except for a few things I remember hearing for 6 weeks.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Except for my beautiful near-death experience. But from my world, that was it. Until I woke up in the world again. Now, I did wake up somewhere else in that time frame. And I can't tell you exactly physically what time it was or where I was, my body was, but I was out. Now, physically, what I'm told is my husband came rushing over and grabbed me just before I hit the floor, called 911. They rushed me by ambulance to the hospital. On the way, I flatlined. And they didn't have the paddles, apparently, to shock my heart. So they did CPR, and they weren't able to get me fully back, my heart going and all of that, until they got me to the hospital. And they were able to revive me there. So they don't know exactly how many minutes I was really dead. But for me, I was, I guess, in just this wonderful place, because what I remember was, going into this black tunnel, kind of like a camera lens, that closes and then opens again. And I was in this beautiful, gorgeous kind of, I guess you'd describe it as a park, but not like any other park I had ever seen. So to me, I knew this wasn't earth, this wasn't life, this was something much greater. And everything that was there was what you would call grass, there was beautiful tree, there was, everything was there, but it wasn't the same. And so I knew I was gone. I was so happy. I felt so wonderful. I felt so loved. And I still felt so connected. I wasn't afraid. I was just loved. And so, so happy. So as I kind of figured everything out and looked around in my surroundings, and it was so beautiful, I saw this wonderful light. Kind of looked like a sidewalk, but it wasn't. It was a light glow. And it was just calling to me. And, if you look at the grass and you look at it now and you see every blade of grass is kind of deteriorated a little bit. But here, every blade of grass was perfect. There was no deterioration. There was no bugs chomping on it. There was no, it was like it had been manicured, every single blade. And the white light was so bright, but it didn't hurt your eyes. It was so loving. You just feel like you've been wrapped with this big, warm blanket of unconditional love. And you just knew you were in the presence of the universe, of the deity of God, of whatever you would call it. And utter forgiveness, utter love. And as I started to go towards this pathway, this nice curved white light, my dad just appeared in front of me. And my dad had already been gone at that time for, I don't know, at least 10 years. And he was perfect. And when he had passed, he had such a horrible, horrible disease. And he was just such a fraction of himself when he passed. And now, in this wonderful place, he was so young and healthy and beautiful. And he had this award-winning smile that I recognized immediately. And he was just there with his arms reached out to me. And it was just the best thing I could have seen. So as I reached forwards towards him to just go into his arms, and he was there for me, but he stopped and he said, no. I said, no, it's not your time. You have more to do. Oh. And I wanted so much to go to him. Yeah. And I said, no, I'm ready. I'm ready. And he said, no, honey, not yet. You feel everything happening all at once. I could feel my other relatives. I felt my mother. I felt my grandparents. I still felt my husband and my son. I could feel people that were still on the earth plane. I could still feel people that were beyond the earth plane all at once. And I learned some things that I didn't understand, right? I learned to be a better person. I learned more about love and how important it is, how it's the most important thing. And then things started to fade back to black. And I didn't want them to go away. But I knew you don't fight when you're told that there's more to do. So I just took a deep breath and I relaxed. I said, okay, be back. And I sent all my love with my loved ones there and with God. And I went back into the black. And I stayed in the black for a while. And I heard things. I heard my husband praying for me. I heard him say that he would take me. I said, God, I will take her. However she comes out, I'll take care of her. And I heard a nurse with me, a male nurse. And he was taking me in for another x-ray, another scan of my brain. And I said, please hold my hand, because I'm afraid. And he said, I'll be there with you. And I heard commotion. I heard other people around me. I heard people talking, but I couldn't make out what they said. And I was there, but I wasn't for a long time. But when I woke up, I was actually in my home. And my husband had me in the bathtub and he was washing my hair. And that's when I came all the way back.
Wow.
That's my story.
Wow, thank you, Kat. Oh, that was just beautiful. I feel your story so deeply. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You're welcome. I'm a very different person now.
Oh, I can imagine. How could you go through that and not be, is what I'm thinking.
True. That's true.
Yeah, exactly. So you said that when you actually felt like you came back into your body fully, you were in the bathtub with your husband washing your hair.
I came back earlier, but I was just in black. I could hear things around me. I knew I was in my body, but I was not coherent enough to deal with what was going on in my body.
Yeah.
All the pain was still taken away from me. Things were happening to my body, but I wasn't able to really function.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the time at the hospital when they were They had me on life support for days. They had done what had happened was I had had a massive brain hemorrhage. I had had 5 aneurysms.
Oh, 5, my goodness.
It was caused by a brain hemorrhage that was a birth defect, where I had the arteries and the veins form with no capillaries at the end.
Oh, wow. Is that an AVM?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is what I had as well. I knew we had some similarities. I had the AVM and I had the brain hemorrhage as well. As you were talking, I was going, oh, okay. Yeah. Wow. Oh, thank you. Yes.
It usually happens earlier in life. But for me, it waited until I was 49 years old.
Oh, wow.
And it finally had filled up enough, and it finally just ruptured. And they had the technology at the time that was close enough to the surface. They had to take out about a golf ball size of my brain to get to it.
Yeah.
But they were able to get to it and cauterize the aneurysms. And even though it was a very functional part of the brain, even the doctors didn't think they would be able to save me, but they did.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It's funny you say the golf ball, because I asked that many years later after my surgery, how much of my brain did you take? And I was thinking just the tiniest amount. And they said, oh, about a golf ball size. And I went, what? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? I had multiple as well up there. So, wow, I'm absolutely blown away. But I'll bring it back to your story, because I know that's what people want to hear. You were there in this beautiful park. Was there anybody else there? I know that you then went on to see your father, but you were talking about how the grass was perfectly manicured, how you were in just this most amazing space, feeling loved. It was just beautiful. Were you there by yourself? Like, physically, what were you seeing apart from the grass?
I saw there were animals there, like squirrels, birds. I could hear music. I heard the sound of angels singing. And I love music. I almost like this was a place for me that was handpicked, that was customized just for me. If it were my husband, for example, maybe it would have been on Dodgers Field. But for me, to be in a park with music and animals would be the most perfect thing for me. Oh, and I wonder if we all get what's perfect for us to make it as comfortable and as beautiful as possible. I don't know, but that's what I had.
Yeah, I've actually wondered that too, because people have very different experiences. There's elements which are the same, whether they're in a park or they're on the beach or they're in the forest. I've heard different stories of where people are and they say, but that's some of my favorite things in life. So I think you might be onto something with that, saying that actually what we see is what would make us feel the happiest.
Yes,
yeah. Were there any things there in that park that were unfamiliar? Were there animals which maybe you hadn't seen before? Were there colours which you hadn't seen before? Things which we don't have here in this realm?
Yes. One thing that I noticed was the sky. Really took me aback. The sky was a color I cannot describe. It was a texture I cannot describe. Mm-hmm. I describe it like a park, and yet if I really could describe it in words, well, I can't. It was alive. It was, you could touch, you could feel it. It wasn't like our sky. And the color, I tried to describe it to my husband once, and we happened to be at a market. And I was looking around trying to find the closest color to the blue that the sky was. And the only thing I could find that was even close was a tanzanite. And I said, do you see the facets and the beauty within the color, within the tanzanite? It's more like that, only better. And I said, and the texture was more like Jell-O, only not gooey. I said, you cannot describe it.
Yeah.
It's indescribable. So it's very, very difficult to describe what I saw and what I experienced. So very much the colors were very, very different, especially the sky.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's amazing. Oh, makes me think about painting. A lot of people have experiences and come back and suddenly they've got artistic abilities. And I wonder how you could paint that. Yeah. Well, me as well. Actually, it's quite funny because my father was an artist. He actually painted this picture, which you can see behind me. This is one of the views out where we live. And he was an incredible artist and he did all sorts of paintings and all sorts of scenery and things like that. I can't even draw a stick figure right. I'm like, where did that talent go?
Me.
I just don't have any of it. But I love what you're talking about, the sky. It just sounds so beautiful, so amazing. Yeah.
It was.
Now, you talked about how you met with your father who had already died earlier. What was that like? You said he was younger in appearance, you said that he looked young and he looked healthy and vibrant. You recognized him straight away, didn't you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And he was probably younger than I had ever known him. But there wasn't a doubt in my mind. It may have even been before I even looked at him. I mean, it was my father. Yeah. There was a recognition beyond look, beyond sight.
Yeah.
And to see him, and I think there was something special about seeing him in that way after having watched him go through this horrible disease that he had. To see him that healthy was special. Even though he doesn't have a body anymore, it was special to see him healthy.
And did you said that you felt the love of your grandparents and you felt the love of other people. Did you see anybody else while you're in this experience?
No, I didn't need to. They were there. They were right there with me. I didn't need to see them. I felt them. I felt their arms around me.
So do you think that you felt the need to see your father? Was there something, I guess, more to that experience of seeing him?
I think it made that experience very real for me. It's something he and I spoke about before he passed, was that he would always be there for me when it was my time. Maybe it made it more real for me, knowing that he had said he would always be there. And I don't know. I think there's always going to be someone that's there for you. It may not even be who you expect, but there's always someone that greets you when it's your time. And he was the one for me. Could have been my mother, my grandmother, it could have been anyone, but he was the one.
Yeah. Were you quite close to him when he was alive?
Oh, very much.
Yeah.
Very much. I was close with my mother, but I was closer with my father, I think. It made sense.
Yeah, I think sometimes it does make sense, doesn't it? The one person that you need, just like you're saying, the environment that you need to be in, the things that you see will be the things that resonate for you. I think the person who's there will often be the one that resonates for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if he told me to go back, there's no way I would say no to him.
Oh, really?
For a variety of reasons.
Well, maybe then that's why it had to be him, because you would actually listen. How hard was that to come back? Do you feel like if you had pushed at all, you could have chosen to stay? Or was it already predetermined you were definitely coming back?
I really wanted to stay. Everything inside of me wanted to stay. But if my father says, and if you're God, if you're deity, if heaven tells you to come back, there's more for you to do, are you going to say no?
Exactly. Yeah.
But no, my dad said, not your time. I was not going to question. But if they had said, well, what do you think, Kat? Do you want to stay or do you want to go? That would have been a different question. Had I been given a choice, complete, utter choice, I would have stayed. But being told there's more for you to do, you need to go back. I've definitely done what I did, and that is go back.
Yeah. So when you came back, did you have an idea of what it was that you had to do? If there was more for you to complete, did you have a feeling of any type of purpose, or did you come back with any kind of instructions or any hints?
I really wish that I had come back with a set of instructions.
I know.
You come back and you think, now what? What am I supposed to do? Is it one little thing? Do I say something at the right time that stops a child from running across the street and getting hit by a car?
And that's it. And then,
or do I, what is it that I do that is my one thing to do? Or is it many? I don't know what it is. I still don't know what it is I need to do or accomplish before I go. Maybe it's talking to you right now.
We never know what it's going to be. I mean, I still ask every day, what's my purpose? And I think it changes, but I think I'm like you. I often wonder, is it one tiny little thing where I just need to be in that place for one thing, whether it's something that happens or a conversation or one thing, or is it the rest of my life work is all about fulfilling some type of purpose? We just don't know, do we? I don't think we ever know. I don't think we ever have it together.
That's right. And I keep learning and I keep growing. And based on that, I'd say there's a reason to keep growing and learning so that maybe I can do more and find that one thing or do more than one thing. So it's a good reason to keep going in the right direction.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. So what was life like for you when you first came back? Were you how were you physically? You'd had surgery, hadn't you?
I was a mess. I was, 6 weeks in a coma after brain surgery. I could not feed myself. I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself. I couldn't walk.
Yeah.
My husband did everything for me.
Yeah, wow. What a support he is.
Yeah. And I was a different person. So, I was a real driver before. I was a take charge woman. And now I had a different belief, had a different religious belief. I was a very different person. And I had, part of my brain gone. I had my whole left side was about 50% strength now instead of what it was. And unfortunately, I won't go into a lot of details about it, but due to some circumstances with my former company, and we'll call it a mix-up, they hadn't been paying my insurance on Cobra, and I had no insurance going into this. So I lost everything.
Oh, my goodness. How did that make you feel? You've come back. You've now got a body which doesn't work. You've been through everything, and you're told that you have to come back because you've still got something to do. Did you feel a bit ripped off? You don't even have insurance. Yes, I'm coming back, but it has to be an extra layer of difficult.
I didn't. And that was weird.
That's amazing.
You would think my husband would, you would think my husband would be like, wait a minute, he retired early, which meant a very small retirement check because he had to take care of me because there was no rehabilitation to be paid for with no insurance. So he was my coach, and he was a good one. And he had me out there in the wheelchair and then on a walker. And we ended up writing a little book together. And it was all about, it was kind of a self-help, get out there and make something of it. And so we did that together, and we really drew some goals and focus for our lives. And we really worked hard. He bribed me with a trip if I would get away from the walker or get away from the wheelchair and get onto the walker. And I did it.
Yeah.
And he got me back into singing. I studied vocal music when I had a speech impediment as a child, which actually was part of the brain that wasn't getting the blood from the problems in there. And so I went back to singing. I ended up doing a tribute band, and I've sang in several casinos and things now. So, so I did some of that. But working full time is not something I can quite do yet, but I can still do a lot of things. I've given several seminars to people about, love and the value of life and life after death. And certainly not to worry about what happens after you die, because it's a pretty wonderful place up there. And I've spoken with my dad. I've spoken to other people about, I've been able to speak to others at times about their loved ones, their past loved ones. I don't have the ability to zone in and say, okay, I can talk to your brother George, but sometimes their brother George comes to me and says he needs to say something to you. So I have a little bit of the ability to do that.
Wow. Is that post-surgery? Is that you didn't have these abilities beforehand?
No. There was a little family thing we had beforehand, but we all tried to, keep it hush-hush. When family knew when someone else was ill or something, but no, that's all since the experience. And again, I can't sit down with someone necessarily and say, "Let me talk to your loved one," but they do come to me. That's something I again don't control, but they do come. They seem to know I've been there and sometimes want to talk with me. Some of them are very strong and wonderful.
Are they? Yeah. Oh, that's
but
wonderful.
I'm very happy that this happened to me, believe it or not. I know I financially, again, lost pretty much everything. We lost our home. But you know what? I'm still happy it happened. And so is my husband. We live a very different life.
Yeah.
And we're happier.
Where does that come from? You're very resilient. You've got...
Stubborn.
No, I'm going to say resilient. Stubborn, it can be a very positive thing as well, can't it? But where does that come from? Were you like that beforehand? You said you were a real goer beforehand, that you were the boss woman. I can't remember the exact words you used, but...
Kind of like that, yeah. A driver,
A driver. Do you think that is... How do I explain this? Do you think that comes from your purpose, the thing that you need to fulfill, or do you think that has come from the experiences that you've been through? Do you think it was always there?
Maybe. I've refocused it. We'll say it that way. I have supervised in my driver capacity 450 people. And I made them work hard. Now I can leave that to the business people, and I can focus on how much love can I give out and share to the world. How many people can I tell to be comforted in the fact that there is definitely life after this life, and that your past loved ones are in a wonderful place, and that you have no fear of dying because it is a fabulous, wonderful place. And if I can spend all my efforts doing that, and yes, if I have to fight, it was just a few months ago I fell and broke my hip.
Oh,
and,
no.
I was fine. I didn't have really a lot of pain. I just dealt with it. When I went into the surgery, I didn't have any fear, because what's the worst that can happen to someone that's ill, right? You die in surgery.
Yeah.
So
been there, done that.
Been there, done that, exactly.
Totally. Oh, that's
so
so funny.
I fought my way back, and I'm ready to. I went to a friend's 100-year birthday party and danced with him. So I'm,
oh, wow.
You live a very different life if you're not afraid of death.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you said recently that, you said in the earlier conversation that your beliefs had changed, that you had a very different spiritual outlook when you woke up, when you were coming back into your body. What was your spiritual life like before this incident? And then how has it changed?
I had a belief before that was, how would I describe it? I was raised in a church that believed that you look at certain individuals and you judge. It was very judgmental. If someone, I'll just come out and say, if someone were gay, they were a sinner. I absolutely, positively do not believe that. And I have many gay friends and adore them and do not believe they are sinners. We are all sinners. I also believe that I was also taught that certain faiths are to be revered. Certain faiths are not good enough. And I do not believe that anymore at all. What I saw in heaven was this, it was actually a lineup of religions and people of different faiths and different characteristics, different, I never had an issue with different nationalities, but it included that in this picture of mine while I was there, of different people of different faiths and such. Say people with different disabilities, which I also never had an issue with, but walking and combining into this image that I had, and God and the universe wrapping their arms around every one of them, as if you have, let's say you have 5 children. Would you love any of those 5 children any less because one was shorter than the other, or one had dark hair and one had light hair, or one loved women and one loved men, or one was raised in this country and one was raised in another country? How could you love them any less? And why would we, as children, as humans, have the right to judge at all? I do not believe in judgment on the earth. And I do not believe we have any right to judge our fellow man. And I just came back believing that. And I am a different person. I'm ashamed that I ever had any ounce of judgment in me at all.
Wow.
So I am very different.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's a question that I get asked a lot. It's a question I always think as well. For me, I was quite young, so I didn't really have any perceptions of what my spiritual beliefs were. I had some inklings, and I look back and I think there's definitely stuff which was there, but to put it into words was very, very difficult. So I love to ask this question to understand how these experiences transform the way we look at things and the way that our beliefs are shaped. So thank you so much for sharing that. Is there anything, if someone's listening to this, what is the one thing that you've gotten out of your experience or you've brought back from your experience that you think is the one thing to share with the world?
I think the one thing is we really need to spread love to one another. There's just not enough of that in this world. And it's falling by the wayside, and I see it. I see from the different generations now that I'm older, I see how love was in, let's say, in the 70s, my good old era that I loved so much when I was a teenager, how much love there was back then. And there was hate in every generation. But I see too much hate right now in the generations where there doesn't need to be hate. And I say, this world is about love and needs to be more about love. So if we can just love one another more. Little things on the freeway, let somebody in. What's it going to hurt you to let them in to the freeway? What's it going to hurt you to let them in line? To love the earth? To not spit your gum on the sidewalk for somebody to step in, make their lives a little easier by just any tiny thing you can do to love each other, to smile at each other, to do something nice and wonderful for each other in the tiniest of ways.
That's exactly it, isn't it? Oh, Kat, thank you so much. Your story warms my heart. You've got a beautiful way of sharing it with us. I feel like it connects with me greatly because you've had that AVM. Many people have the AVM, especially when they're in the brain. You can get them all over your bodies, but when they're in our brains, most people don't come back from that. So I know it sounds a little bit weird, but it's quite exciting for me to talk to somebody else who's been through that. Yeah. And to see that today, I mean, look at you, you're smiling, you're vibrant, you've got most of your mobility back. Have you got all of your mobility back?
Most. I still limp a little.
Yeah.
But I'm doing fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it, isn't it? It's acknowledging that things aren't 100%, but actually they're fine, that we've got enough. I love your message that it all comes back to love, which is just so beautiful. So Kat Sanders, thank you so much for sharing this today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated with all of the events we have going on and to visit www.letstalkneardeath.com to join the VIP community.